Let's go down to this image first, and we'll look at, once again, the sky. So the sky is getting a little bit bright up here. Now you'll notice I have some black lines on the edge of my image. That's because I used a filter which creates a bit of a vignette for this particular photograph. So I'm looking at the shadow values here. So let's bring in our color sampler tool, and I want to place one on the cloud here and in those shadow areas here. So I want to boost the detail in this area in here. So I'm going to come down to my shadow slider and just boost that area up like that, which looks great. And I'm going to come into my graduated filter again and pull that filter down to here. And just bring that exposure down just a little bit. It's okay that it's lighter in this area than that area. That's because the sun is coming from the upper left-hand corner. I'll click on that right now. And let's go back and do our hue and saturation adjustments. And I'm going to go back into my blues. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to go into aquas, but that's not really affecting it at all. I want to boost the color of this grass a little bit. So I'm going to go into hue and just change the color of that grass. So let's get it a little greener. So there we go. So that adds some nice color in there. And let's see what happens with the oranges, which will affect the color of the dirt. So very, very small adjustment here, and come into the reds. And a very small adjustment there as well. And then come into the sharpening tool, and I will give this image a lot of sharpening because I want the detail and the sharpness in the grass. And that looks good. Now there's another filter here that we can apply to the photograph, and it's called the dehaze filter. And the dehaze filter works in a similar manner as a polarizing filter, but we're using it in software. So I'm going to take this to extremes, and we can see down at -100 and +100. So +100 is too extreme, obviously -100 is. So this works like a polarizing filter, and imagine it as though it's taking off a sort of film on top of the image, and that makes the image look less clear. So think of it in that way. And you can see what happens is it takes away that fogginess to the image and really makes it vibrant. So this is a nice filter that you could also apply to this image, and it really makes the image pop, okay? So let's go into our crop tool, and we'll drag our crop out. So let's get rid of this vignetting. And I think for this image, I don't necessarily need all that sand in the foreground. Now the problem with cropping images like this is if you ever wanted to frame them, they're a very odd framing size. But that's something we sort of have to live with respect to shooting on 35mm. Now I'm just playing with the crop here, and I'm looking at the relationship of these darker areas. And we can see what happens is as we introduce those darker areas to the image, it really starts to take away from the house. So whenever I'm editing photos, I always ask myself, what is the most important thing in the photograph? And how do I retain interest on that part in the photograph? So for me, it's really the relationship between the sky, the house, and the environment, and really the sense of vastness of that environment. So that's important for me. So I'm going to hit the hand, and there's our final image with some adjustments to the sky, saturation and sharpness. And I just like the feeling of solitude with this particular photograph.